I know has one, but very few people understand its purpose and how it can be used to help you thrive in your work. Now, of course, I'm talking about your core wounds, those painful parts of our past that, we've thought maybe were going to wound us or hurt us, but really they're a lesson that we get to use that's a gift in really being the best, amazing, most extraordinary entrepreneur on this planet. And today I have a really, really special guest who's going to talk with me about how to understand the power that our wounds have to help us learn how to harness the gift it brings to ourself and to the work we bring to the world. Hi, I'm Melanie Benson, and I'm America's leading small business optimizer. I love this series where I get to all kinds of amazing entrepreneurs and business owners who figured out how to optimize some piece of the work they do so that we can have business run smoother, we can have more fulfillment, we can thrive, ultimately serve more people and generate more income. Now, today, I just have this amazing guest, somebody who's very near and dear to my heart. I want to introduce you to Jeffrey Van Dyk. Now, he is an international speaker, strategist, and a guide who works with highly successful leaders and founders in the second half of their life. And they know that they're meant to transition into their life's legacy and leave a meaningful, lasting impact on their industry and the world, but maybe they're not quite sure how to make that happen yet. And this is where Jeffrey's extraordinary gift comes in. So, hello, darling.
Hello, hello. Great to be here, sweetheart.
Yes, I love all the nature in your room, and it's beautiful. Gotta love having a little bit of life in our office, right?
That's right, absolutely.
So I've had the great fortune of knowing Jeffrey for quite some time now and experiencing his gift in different ways that it's shown up in the world. But you have decided to really step into working with leaders and founders and people who are moving into this second phase of their life, which, the 60, 70, 80 plus years, right?
Sometimes a little sooner than that, but yes.
Yes, no, I'm kidding. But really, when we've kind of, is there something that's supposed to be more about our life? And yet we don't quite know what that means. How did you land in this space where you knew this is the work that you're meant to do?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't overnight, I'll tell you that.
No? Okay.
I think, sometimes we come at business like, here's the thing I'm going to do. And we bring it out to the world and we craft it and we launch it. And sometimes, I think actually more often than not, we do that and then the world tells us what our work is and who it's for, right? It tells us who needs it and who's wanting it. One of the things I'm most passionate about is getting us into the place where we're really serving the people we're designed to serve, the tribe that we're meant to lead, that on some level only we can lead, and to precisely identify who those people are and why they need you. And, after years of working with entrepreneurs of lots of shapes and sizes and so forth, what ended up happening is that my people have a big calling, right? There's big work for them to do in the world, global impact for them to have, to change an industry or a social movement or something significant in this world. And it turns out that the people that typically start to receive that kind of a calling are in the second half of life, usually in their 50s, where they have enough skill and experience and resources to apply to a larger contribution. And it's a little confusing oftentimes for people at that point because they're usually at the pinnacle of success, right? Where all that skill and all those resources and all that training has really built something significant where they're, an executive or a founder of a company or leading something, but they know that on some level that was the training program for what their life's work is really about and need to go about, really taking stock of, I need to make a change and shift into what this larger thing is.
So what do you think happens for somebody internally or externally that's the sign that they're ready for this shift?
Usually it's, something that they built that was passion, that they thought was the thing, that suddenly they can't show up to with the same passion anymore. They can't, get out of bed and have the same zeal for it. Coupled with this sort of nagging internal knowing that there's something more. So on one level, it's something as simple as that. If we sort of advance that a little bit further, it would be starting to get insight, wisdom about what the thing is. Or maybe they're seeing something in their industry that they know, like, I'm meant to change that. I'm meant to be a leading voice in my industry to address this issue. And I can't do it from the platform I'm in right now, right? That was an incubator. I thought it was a thing, but it turns out it was an incubator for what the actual thing is. Mm. And, that can be a scary thing, both financially, from your social reputation, to really moving from, most of my people are out there really loved in their industry. They're really revered and loved by their clients and by their employees and colleagues. And there's something that has to happen when you move into thought leadership and really changing an industry, which is you have to move from being liked to being both loved and potentially despised.
Oh, this one's so uncomfortable. I know we've had this discussion before, but you're hitting the nail on the head, and you're right. It's like it's almost like a level of maturity with the way we're meant to serve, is we have to move away from needing approval and validation and really be able to do what we were born to do and to get detached from how people are going to take that in and whether or not they like it.
Yeah, and, as much as, we can talk about, I shouldn't be worried about that at this point in my life, really, the truth is, we're still emotional beings, right? Mm-hmm. That stuff still comes up. As much as our logic says, oh, no, I can see this, and I can see the transition, and I can, we still have emotional response to it. And honestly, the thing that's really happening for people that most of my people don't realize is happening when they get to me is that their life, their soul, is calling them for a change in terms of their operating system. What's actually driving them? What's fueling their motivation in the world, right? Because in the first half of life, it actually is unconsciously our wounds that fuel it. If Dad said you're never going to be anything, and then you go on to be a CEO to prove Dad, even if Dad's dead by now, right? You're still unconsciously driving against that wound, or it's a reactive fuel. And at some point, that just wears you out. And that's the other thing that happens in the second half of life. You just go like, oh, I can't push like this anymore. It doesn't work. I'm not willing to. There has to be another way, right? And so not only is it like there's another thing for me to be doing, but there's another way in which I must do it. And while I get that, I had a client once come to me, a very well-known actress and celebrity who's on a hit show today, said to me, Jeffrey, I realize that how I've been working isn't working anymore. I just don't know what the replacement is. Right? And that's really where a lot of my deeper work comes in, is shifting someone's operating system as a leader so that they can do the bigger work. Because usually they're like, man, I'm taxed as it is. And the idea of a bigger contribution, I don't even see how that's possible. Right? And it's not possible from the old operating system. It requires that kind of transformation to be able to have the resources and energy and wherewithal to have a bigger impact.
Yeah, and there's a quote that's been around for a while that, the way you got where you are today, right, the way you are going to get where you want to go next. And I think that's what you're really calling forth here, is clarity that, hey, you got where you were with all this old resourcefulness from a driver that's expired its purpose.
Yeah. And in fact, that's one of the things I say, that all our wounds have an expiration date. They have a shelf life.
I love that.
And it's like, a reactive fuel, like if you're sending a rocket into orbit, you want to put enough fuel in it to actually get into orbit, and anything less than that wouldn't work. It wouldn't get you where you want to go. But then once you're in orbit, something has to change, right? You don't use the same thruster as you used to get there, and you don't need the same amount of fuel. It takes a very different type of push to move things forward out of orbit. Right. And that's really what people are doing in the second half of life, is saying, like, I have a whole orbit right now that I'm in of my business and my experience and my family and my friends and where I live, this whole orbit. And I need to escape it. I need to speak from and live from and lead from a very different place. And that can be really threatening. This orbit is probably on the surface level pretty nice, fairly comfortable.
Yeah. It's a comfort zone
Right.
that's been built. And I think as we've had multiple conversations over the years, this is one of the things that I really had to embrace from a whole new place is that you might have to blow up or leave behind or dissolve in some way what you've been in order to really have the bandwidth, the energy, the clarity, or even just the the communication to the outside world. Look, I'm not that anymore. That is no longer where I'm going. And so I think that might be a tough pill for people to swallow. If you were coaching someone who's really stuck in that, oh my God, I can't leave that behind, or I've worked so hard to build that up, but it's not where I'm going. What's something they can embrace to help them have the courage to step into this next phase of their journey?
Yeah, I find that when people have that, I have to shift, or there's a bigger calling or something, even for the most resourceful, great leaders, it can sometimes feel a bit like I have to do this. It's calling to have no choice. And when we feel like we don't have choice, it's one of the worst feelings in the world as human beings, right?
Yes.
When we feel like we're a victim to the thing that we're meant to be doing. And people don't put it in that language usually. They don't know that that's what's going on. But really they're like, I know I must. I know I have to. I'm in resistance and So the first thing I remind people of is you have choice. You have a say in what you do and when you do it and how quickly you do it. And if you really take ownership of the transition instead of feeling like it's happening to you, if you take ownership of it, then you can be very guided on one hand and strategic on another hand in terms of how you make the transition. Right? So I have a client right now who has a great little marketing firm in the East Coast. She's done it for 15 years. They do about $10 million a year. And she has some great contracts, and her people love her. She just won some of the awards in her industry in the last year. But she knows there's another message for her to bring to the world, right? And that she needs to move from being the owner and CEO and leader of this company to really being a thought leader with a message guiding a movement. And so, we've been working on a strategic plan to build the company up to be really attractive to the right buyer, to strategically sell the business and really get the top dollar she can from it. Not just like, I'm done with it, I'm off, I'm doing my next thing, but really honor what she's built, right? And honor the people she's built it with and transition it with honor in a way that honors all those people and honors herself with the financial resources that will really be the foundation for the next chapter. So, for whether it's selling a company or transitioning out of a career, there's a way to do it with integrity and with honor, and where you're saying, no, I have a choice about this. I can engage with it consciously about how I make this transition. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is I always have people mine out their doubts, their fears, their worries, their concerns about going to the next chapter. And both the ones that are really logical, like, will I make enough money? Will I be able to continue supporting my family or have the lifestyle I've built up? Whatever those logical concerns are, as well as the concerns that seem illogical, right? With people that really feel like they're meant to bust a move in a market, meaning like really address something that has been the elephant in the room in a market, or blow something up purposefully. There's all emotional concerns as well. Will I be taken out literally or metaphorically? I have a client I was working with who's a rocket scientist, and was getting really spiritual insight about a new form of energy to create and how to manufacture it. And this is a guy that's worked really closely with the Pentagon and with different large powers in the world. And he's like, look, if this gets in the wrong hands, no bueno. And so he big responsibility to how do I step into this next thing safely and not be taken out? Like, he's like, literally, people in my position, stuff happens, right? And as much as we don't want to acknowledge it, that might be true. Or it might just be a emotion that seems totally illogical, but is there nonetheless. And so what I have people do is mine out those as well, and then ask themselves, what do I need to feel safe moving forward? And it might mean, oh, I need a plan around this. I need this kind of emotional support. One of the things for me when I really said yes to my bigger calling was I a tribe to me. People I trust that have my back, that can call me on my stuff if I don't really have this fear at this point, but one of my big fears was that it'd all go to my head, that I'd get famous and my would get all inflated, and then I'd be all alone, right? Because I'd be a jerk and nobody would want to be around me. And so that was one of the fears that I had at one point. And I have a spiritual teacher I've worked with for many years, and I just told her, I was like, look, you've been on this journey with me, and I need you to tell me if I get out of line, if I start getting, if I forget my humility, basically, I need you to tell me. And she's somebody that I know would, and that gave me a sense of freedom to say, okay, I can move forward. So those are a couple things that I tell people to really pay attention to, because man, when you don't, what happens is you go and you do your work, right? And I see people, this client I told you about with the firm in the East Coast, she's been going to speaking conferences and going to different entrepreneurial conferences to figure out how to shape this message and launch this next chapter and so forth, but she hasn't been able to pull the trigger on any of it, right? Because she hasn't addressed any of the fears, doubts, worries, and concerns that are the resistance. So it's like somebody being in a boat but keeping the anchor on the ocean floor, or driving a car with a parking brake on, right? And it wears out the engine quickly, and you don't get very far very, very fast either.
You have great metaphors. I love that. Well, and in my own work, and personally as well as in the work that I do with my Money DNA program, I see this all the time, where there's some kind of a wound that causes the limiting beliefs or the thought patterns that this could happen or will happen. And then all of a sudden, every opportunity and every situation is filtered through that limiter.
Yeah.
And, most people are completely unconscious to them. So it sounds like one of the biggest steps, if you're going to really unleash your greatness on the world and you're ready to just really follow that path that you're being called to do, is you've really got to look at the fear, the doubts, the pattern of thought that keeps you where you are now. And I think a lot of people think, hey, if I'm not broke, that stuff probably isn't, it's not the thing I need to focus on.
Right.
It's affecting all of us at all times.
Yeah.
Most of us are just really good at pushing through and trying to, not let it affect us. So do you see that people oftentimes, when they're in that pushing, I'm trying to get through it, I'm going to override that, I'm not going to let that doubt or that fear affect me. Do you see ultimately it still plays out in some way, shape, or form in their future?
Yes, and I think there is a place to go like, okay, I can recognize it's coming up for me, and I'm going to push ahead, right? Yes. And I think there's a place for that, absolutely. The place where that doesn't work is when you say you're going to do that, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? You say you're going to just push ahead, but you still keep running into the same old barrier, meaning, you're not making the phone calls you need to make to move that project forward. Or, you're dragging your feet in some other way. Or when you think about it, some old emotional response comes up. So, the work I do isn't about healing per se. It's not therapy at all. Most of the people that come to me have actually done a lot of personal development work long before they get to me. So they know that path. They're usually aware of their wounds. They've worked on them. So it's not about like, oh, let's drudge up the old crap. Not at all. My work is about finding the value in the purpose of what you've gone through. So we've heard things like your mess is your message, right? We've heard those phrases before. And, you're here to teach what you've learned and all that. And that's fine and good. And yeah, it's true. But I think it's incomplete or not as precise as I think it needs to be. One of the things I do is I look at the pattern of our wounding. The reason I look at it is because I want to know not just how did it train and develop me, what did I build in response to that, right? Dad told me I was never good enough, and I worked to be valedictorian and top of my class and became CEO. And so, yeah, we can see that, right? And we all have ways in which we've compensated for the wound that's trained us in a really purposeful way. So that's one part of it. The other part is, who has it trained you to lead? Mm-hmm. Right?
Which taps us back into this tribe conversation.
Right. What is the transformation that you, and on some level only you, can offer to your tribe? Yeah. And that's where I feel like it really precisely dials in what your contribution is. So I'll give you an example. So first, let me just say wounds. We've been talking about wounds, but we haven't really defined it yet. Right. So let me just take a moment and define that. To me, is a wound is anything that at some point in your life you said ouch around and didn't want to be a part of. Ooh, that hurts. I don't like it. And wounds can be acute, meaning, the time my dog got run over by a car and I saw it and, that however that impacted you. But most wounds are long-standing over time, right? Having a abusive father or having a perfectionist mother or growing up with a sister that you were always in the shadow of her big light, right? And so when those things happen, we make up beliefs about ourselves and the world that shape how we move forward. For me, I always felt really different. I grew up in a really religious community in Western Michigan, filled with Dutch people. I was born in Holland, Michigan. My last name is Van Dyk. I'm third generation Dutch American, right? Very Calvinist. And my ancestors moved to America to be more puritanical because the Dutch were too liberal, right?
Ooh, okay.
Right? They moved here to be austere in their religion. And I'm anything but austere. I live full out. I think outside of the box. I'm a trailblazer. And so I didn't fit in at all. And then when I was 13, I realized I'm gay. And so then talk about really not fitting in. And, there was the hellfire and damnation for all of eternity because you're a sinner and all of that. So what it built in me, my compensation for it, was to build a high level of competence so that I didn't people. I couldn't rely on them. I couldn't trust them because it didn't feel safe because I wasn't like them. And, so in the first half of life, it did very well. I'm very good at a lot of things, which I find actually a lot of entrepreneurs are, right? However, it also kept me very isolated, very alone. I have to do it all myself. And what's been interesting for me in my journey of saying yes to my bigger calling is really recognizing that I can't do it on my own, that I'm not meant to, that I'm part of a larger team that has a collective mission, that I have a role as a guide for that collective team, and in terms of shaping who I know I'm most deeply designed to serve, is that one of the underlying cravings for my tribe is belonging, right? And usually they are go-getters who've been really driven, really successful, but on some level, they've done it all themselves.
Yeah.
That's one of the core wounds for my tribe that needs to be addressed and transformed because we cannot answer our larger calling autonomously. It's impossible. And I say that to myself as much as everyone I serve.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to ask you about is what's been a big challenge for you in finding your tribe and really, getting to the place you're at. And I don't know if it's that or something else, but, I think as somebody who is a trailblazer, who is so confident, sometimes we think people have it all figured out.
Yeah.
And the business is just going to be easy. But I know, we all know, like when we have these conversations over a glass of wine or five,
Yeah.
We're all talking about the things that don't always work out so well. So
Yeah,
what would you say is that has been that for you on your
Been one of the
path?
big ones for me.
Yeah.
Just recently I was journaling with my spiritual guidance and about a new project I have with a couple other people that we're working on, and I was like, what's the higher purpose of this, and why did we really come together? And I'm doing it with an MD that's been on Oprah and Dr. Phil, another guy who has a list of like 1.7 million people around the world that follow the stuff he does. And they said, Jeffrey, you've all been hiding in plain sight. And this work we're doing, they're like, for the tribe, it's about this, which mirrors what we're doing. But for you, it's about really, really, really stepping into the message you're here to share with the world, your soul's message. And they said, you've on some level been hiding behind what you do and how you do it, right? And I have a really beautiful, well-developed body of work. And I can hide behind that body of work and who it's for and what it does and what the value of it is, right? And this MD I'm talking about, she can hide behind being a global expert in the area of medicine she's an expert in. But it's another thing to step out and put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm on earth for. This is the message I'm here to bring. This is the movement I'm to galvanize. This is what I'm here to address in this world or in this industry. That's a difficult thing for a lot of people, because you have to have such a internal self and in your guidance, support around you, that you can take whatever blows might come your way. I think this is why a lot of celebrities burn out.
Yeah.
It's because they don't have the capacity built for what comes their way as they step forward, and are really put in the public eye that way. It was just my birthday a couple days ago, and what is and hosted a birthday party for me, and it was just 10 of my closest friends, and something shifted for me that night, in that I had my soul tribe around the table. The people that see me clearest, that are behind me 100% of the way, that have my back, that know that I have big work in this world to do and are here to support me in doing it. And I think it's incredibly necessary for people on this path to have that kind of tribe around them. And I was able to look around that table, and they spent a while sharing what they see in me and what they see for me this coming year. Mm. And it was amazing to get that reflection. But the thing I really saw was, wow, I have people that have my back no matter what, that see the bigness of my mission and are with me. And it shifted something about this fundamental aloneness I've felt on my journey. Like at an emotional, psychological, cellular level, I don't know how you describe it, but it shifted something for me, where I really got at another level, not just I'm not alone, but how much I'm supported.
Yeah.
And
That's
it was
healing.
amazing. It was really healing and gorgeous, beautiful.
It sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
This is the point where oftentimes I'll ask my guests about something they've learned to optimize. But I actually want to talk about a specific thing I know you've optimized, and that is how to connect with the right tribe. Mm. And this feels really important because we've talked about tribe, but also because some of the work you and I have done and the conversations we've had some really extraordinary conversations about how so many people are serving the wrong tribe, right, or don't really know who their tribe is. And it's part of why they're not able to get the work out in the world in the way they really envision. So
Yeah.
Could you share with us how you really were able to optimize the way you connect with your tribe
Mm-hmm.
and what that really means?
Yeah. So let me just share a little bit about what I do and how it shapes our understanding of tribe, and then I'll talk about my own journey just a little bit. So in my work, I ask 5 basic questions. When we look at your wounding, usually when people start with me, right, I have a 2-hour session I do with people at the beginning of all my work, whether we just do that or do a longer VIP body of work together. But in that 2-hour session, we start by looking at 3 to 5 wounds from childhood and a few from adulthood. And what I'm looking for is the pattern of the wounding. And the reason I look at childhood and adult is patterns repeat, right? And I don't care so much as, was it the biggest one, or, was it early childhood or late childhood? I'm just looking for what the pattern of the wounding is, right? Because your tribe is going to share the same pattern. And the reason I say that is, look, if you're really meant to transform somebody's life, you can teach them how-to stuff, sure, and that's nice, and that's fine, and that's good, and it's valuable. However, it's not transformational, right? Transformation happens when you address something in someone that they cannot seem to address themselves. That thing, that area of life that they bump up against left and right, no matter how they attack it. Right? And usually people do that for a good long time, and then they try to bury it and ignore it, and it comes back up as a 3-headed dragon, and that's when they really need your help. So we need to find out what that is. What's the underlying wound that's causing them to be blind in terms of how to address that problem, right? And it's going to manifest in some particular area. So I'll give you an example. As I look at patterns, I had one guy where the pattern was disappointment. And really then we have to take it on personally. I'm a disappointment as the belief, right? And he spent his whole life trying not to be a disappointment. I mean, he has a multi-million-dollar business trying not to be a disappointment, right? So I'm not a disappointment is the primary thing. And what does it mean? It means he goes above and beyond for all of his clients and he does all this stuff. But it also means he's exhausted, he's overcommitted, right? He doesn't know when to stop. I have another woman where the biggie was she grew up with an Episcopal priest for a father who was highly abusive and controlling at home. Right? Loved publicly, highly abusive and controlling at home. So then I go through these 5 questions. What happened? How did you feel? Based on how you felt, what did you crave? Based on what you craved and longed for, what did you do to try to get that craving need met? And based on what you did over and over and over and over again to try to get that craving need met, how did you develop? So what happened? How did you feel? What did you crave? What did you do? And how did you develop? Now, when I also work with people personally, I'm looking at what beliefs did you make up about yourself and the world that are really struck leadership today, but sometimes it's hard to mine out on our own. Anyway, so we did this with her, and she said, well, on the most basic level, here was the big wounder, right? There's other things, but that's the biggie. So how did you feel? Felt controlled, among other things, but over and over and over and over again, it was like I felt controlled, I felt controlled, I felt controlled, I felt controlled. What did she long for? Freedom, 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 freedom. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be free, right? What did she do to try to get that freedom need met? Well, in childhood, she found really creative ways to sneak around dad's back. Really creative, because he had an eagle eye, right? And what can she do today? What did she develop? She found very creative ways to get around problems in business. Now, she owns an SEO company, right? Search engine optimization in Canada. She was doing quite well when she came to me, had, a good handful of employees, etc. But she was like, I don't feel as differentiated in my market as I could be. And I know there's something bigger for me, a bigger call. Please help. When we started talking, she said, blah, 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 I work with brick and mortar companies and blah, blah, blah. And then she kind of mentioned off the cuff, like, yeah, and I've been working with franchises. And my intuition was like, that's it, right? I don't know why. My process will tell us why, but that's it. So then we went through this, and And it just was plain as day. I'm like, okay, so when franchisees buy into a franchise and cash out their stock options to buy a Subway or whatever it is, what do they want? They want freedom. They want safety, but they want freedom. The franchisor, what does the franchisor want? Brand consistency across all channels, i.e. control, right? So her life PhD is in the control freedom dynamic. And what we did is find an industry where that dynamic runs rampant. And so that's the first thing, is we find out what the pattern is. For her, it was this control and freedom. For the other person, it was disappointment. For another person, it might be rejection, or I get punished when I shine. Or for another person, it might be, I get taken advantage of. Whatever the pattern is. And then I look and see, okay, who's your market? And how is this pattern playing out in your market? And then I break it down into public problems, the problems they're aware of, that they're banging their head against, looking for solutions around, which is where you need to brand, where you need to actually say, I have a solution for that. Then I look at their secret problem, which is how they feel about the public problem they cannot solve. That's the emotional content that mirrors the feelings you had in the first half of life and your greatest struggles. It's what I call the away from motivator versus the craving, which is the motivator. And then I look at the unknown problem, which is the pattern level of the wound. And the reason they can't solve their problems is because they cannot see the pattern. Right. And your job as a transformational leader is to both address their business need or the public need, but do it in a way that simultaneously shifts the pattern in their life. So for her, we looked and said, okay, great. So what's the problem around SEO in the franchise industry? And she said, well, it's brand compliance. You can create a strategy, but the franchisees aren't rolling it out. They're doing whatever they want on Facebook and Twitter and whatever else, right? So how we then structured her offer and reshaped her positioning in the marketplace is to be the expert in compliance, right? Mm-hmm. To be the expert in SEO and social media marketing compliance for franchises. And
that's brilliant.
Her business blew up. Now, what was interesting, so that's the business side. Now, on the internal side, we talked in the first half of this call about the internal journey, right? So she started writing copy, and it was all freedom-based copy, right? And I was like, oh, no, honey, right? The franchisees aren't the one hiring you. It's the franchisor. It's the parent company. It's dad, right? So, then we needed to shift the languaging in her approach to the market around control. And once she moves into the company, then to sit down and basically have a powwow with the people that just hired her and said, okay, so here's the deal. You want control, they want freedom. I know both, but I'm going to have to shift the way we approach the delivery. Now that we've agreed we're going to work together, right? First part sales, second part delivery. I'm going to have to shift our approach to a freedom-based approach that gets your needs met but allows them to feel a sense of autonomy and freedom at the same time, right? And really what it is doing at a mission level is healing the control-freedom dynamic in the franchise industry, right? So that's the larger mission. It has a very specific business application. It really, really fine-tunedly, to create a new word, precisely shapes not just who she's meant to serve, but how she's meant to serve them and what her unique positioning is to that marketplace that nobody else has in the way she has, right? Because nobody has her wounding. And what I say is that, if you're going to hire a Sherpa to go hiking in the Himalayas, you don't want somebody who's been around like a year or two or gone hiking once. You want that third generation Sherpa that knows the ins and outs of the mountains. And each one of us have a mountain range that we know the ins and outs of, that we've traveled on through our lifetime, that we're an expert at. And instead of just trying to get rid of it, oh, I hate it when that comes up, and I hate that part of me, and I hate that old wound, and I hate that thing that's enough, or that I'm scared to shine, or that I'm all alone, or that people take advantage of me, or whatever it is, right? That there's a time to stop battling with it. and to start understanding the value of it, the use of it, the purpose of it, and shaping that in our contribution in a way that makes our business really succeed, but also allows us to contribute in a way that only we can.
Beautiful. That's very eloquently said, and ties together so perfectly how, if we really understand our wounding, our patterns, these beliefs that have been driving, how we can better serve the right tribe of people that are just going to be hungry for what we're doing. And
hungry.
Oh my God, there's so much more I want to go into, but I know we have to wrap up. I would love it if more people could tap into your brilliance and wisdom. And I understand that you're now going to be live streaming the talks you do in Santa Monica, California. And I am very excited. I've personally, I've been experiencing you in so many different ways, from being in a mastermind to, having, a couple sessions with you over time. But when I sat in that room, magic happened. Like, I literally felt things opening up that I'd been stuck around for months and months and months. And it is an extraordinary experience. So whether you're just looking to kind of unleash more of your greatness, or you would like to really start to experience an opening where you have felt stuck or not clear, Jeffrey, share with us how someone could tap into your sessions that you do live in Santa Monica once a month.
Cool. So, thank you, Melanie. And I love doing that work. So I do a monthly salon, if you will, a monthly event in LA, in Santa Monica, California, the third Thursday of every month, that starting September 17 of this year, I'll be live streaming. So people can tap into that globally, which is really, really awesome. And what I do is I share a key tenet of my body of work for the first 30 to 40 minutes, and then I coach people live. Because it's one thing to understand a concept, it's a whole nother thing to see it and experience it and see somebody working through something that maybe you're working through as well. And that's really when those insights and ahas start to pop. So that's what's exciting for me. Yeah. So if people want to check that out, they can just go to Jeffrey Van Dyk. That's JeffreyVanDyk.com. There's no E at the end of my last name. So JeffreyVanDyk.com. And go to the events page and you'll find out about those. You can get on the list to stay abreast of what's happening in that arena. So that's a great way to plug in and be a part of this community that really knows there's bigger work for them to do in the world. And on my same site, if there's a deeper level of work you want to look at doing with me personally, you can just go there and see working with me and fill out a form there. And we'll be in touch that way too. But either way, it's one of my great joys is doing those monthly events and supporting this tribe of people that know there's big work for them to do in the world, and they're meant to have a hand in shaping and shifting our current world and shaping the new world. And part of what they need to do is be part of a community that's doing that, really, and really see what their hand is, what role is, and how they fit into a larger picture of transformation in this world, what the bigger mission is that they're a part of, so they don't feel like I'm doing this thing solo, but really, wow, there's a larger something happening here and I'm plugging in.
Yeah, and I've been on both sides, in the audience listening, having breakthroughs, as well as having an opportunity to be in a hot seat. So the live streams are awesome, and if you get a chance to go live in Santa Monica when he's doing one of the talks, I highly recommend it. It is extraordinary. And again, a lot of thought leaders and trailblazers who are showing up in that room. Yeah. Jeffrey, thank you so much for enlightening us, inspiring us, sharing your brilliance. And I think you've probably opened up a few neurons to fire in bigger ways here for our listener today. And as you're listening in, I would love to hear from you. What shifted today? Where was that aha moment? You can come right over to the blog at melaniebensonstrick.com. If Jeffrey's episode isn't right there on top, you can just type his name in the search bar. Share with us in the comments, what you're taking away from today. And, one of my favorite sayings is information doesn't have value until you actually take action on it. So share with us what you're going to move forward from today's session. All right, we'll be back again next week with another really awesome episode of Small Business Optimizer. And Jeffrey, thanks again for an extraordinary, inspiring session today.
Thank you, sweetheart. Take care.